how do you solve some things when your message really can't change? It's got to be what it's got to be. And in this case, it's engineers, it's things that a system has to be followed. And so one of the things I struggled with was, yes, I want to listen, I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm unbendable. And so not to find a way through the problem, not to try to find a way to think outside the box and solve the problem differently, but to be empathetic or listening and yet being unbendable and not angry, not arrogant, but unbendable. And in this case, that was a little bit new to me. I'm saying I've learned some new tricks, but in this case, because there's engineering involved and there are inspection processes involved, using what I've learned in methods of communication, critical thinking, to have that and be unbendable, to know that I want to find a way through this problem, but I'm stuck.
Yeah, let me ask you, is it the fact that there's a system or criteria or requirements within engineering that do not allow you personally to change?
You hit it right on the head, Tanya. It wasn't me that was unbendable. It's the system that's unbendable. And
Right.
if I'm going to support the system, that makes me unbendable. And so really, yeah, you're right. It's not me being a sounding board that can't hear.
Right.
There's a system, and I have to support that system. And in this case, that system is unbendable.
The person you're talking about is intrinsically motivated. They want to do something. What you're saying is that it's not that I don't want any one thing or not, it's that the system will not allow for it. So there's an extrinsic motivation for the criteria and the requirements that are there, tend to do with safety, right, process, all kinds of things, something like that.
It's correct, yes. And so it wasn't like I didn't want to help them solve their problem, but those problems had to be solved within the system. Anything outside of that system didn't really solve the problem. It just increased, made, magnified, scattered, made all those problems even more difficult.
Yeah. Think about that very mini process that gets to the crux of thinking differently. Acknowledge them, what's good about the situation. He's voicing his desire, his concern, his whatever. I'm glad you brought this up. This is obviously important to you. I can sense your energy around this. That's acknowledging. What people want is to be heard, to be seen.
So interesting. I like the words you used because really that is what I said, but not in such nice terms. They are the expert. They are the professional in what we were talking about. And really that's what I needed to say is you guys have the ability, you have the knowledge, you have the skill set, but you have to stay within the system. Just because you want to find another way, you guys are good at it. You have proven that you are good at it. But please stay inside the system. So can use the terms that I could have used.
Well, that's the thing we always want to be thinking about is there is a language for problem solving. There is a language for navigating this ambiguity. It's not ambiguous in the sense that this guy wants something that's not possible. It's ambiguous in how do I get this person to understand the confines of the requirement. And those confines of the requirement could well be because of the concern around them. To be a good critical thinker, you really must be a creative thinker, and that means you explore before you make your decision. It sounds like in this instance, the decision was clear. It had to be done in a certain way. Is that true?
Yeah, no, with engineering,
Okay.
there are certain parameters you have to follow.
Well, and that speaks to the linearity of it. I mean, not everything requires creative thinking. Let's be clear. If it's a non-negotiable, it's a non-negotiable. Still, though, how do you navigate that, I think is what you're saying in conversation.
Yes, because you never discredit any conversation completely, even though you feel like it's very clear, specifications are what they are. I think the thing that I was intrigued with was, look, here's a situation where I can be a listener, but I can't really participate in solving the problem or what are all the ideas or gather data in such a manner because the process was stringent.
In that instance where you don't have the opportunity to really get into a big exploratory conversation, we do know, however, that people like to be seen and they like to be heard. One thing that you could say is, tell me more. What is on this person's mind? What could you learn from him as to why he's coming at this in such a significant way that he really wants to do it in this particular way? Tell me more. And what else? And what else? And that would provide you the opportunity to listen to him, gather information, our first step. And then what you could do if you were to replay the conversation, what would it be like to then acknowledge, wow, you've really thought about this. Wow, you really have a lot to say here. Those are the good things. What are the potentials? I could see how maybe with more understanding, maybe things could be done. Then you come to your concern. However, there is criteria within the industry that we must obey. This is not me talking, this is an industry standard. So maybe you want to bring these ideas forward and we can explore them while we also respect the criteria in place right now.
Yeah, and I think, being a manager, you want people to feel heard,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly you pause on that. On the other hand, you're trying to move the decision forward relatively quickly,
Mm-hmm.
relatively rapidly, and without ambiguity, because ambiguity can come back and bite you legally, where they say, no, you said that that might be okay. You said, and of course, then that becomes is okay, referencing back to the proper specifications, the starting
Yeah.
point, the clarifications. But yeah, it was just interesting today where skill sets to gather information, to be part of the process, and yet have to respect a system and be,
Yeah.
like I felt, just kind of unbendable. You
Well,
can't get me to commit to your new ideas. I welcome you. In fact, that's interesting that you'd say that. I welcomed him to appeal to the state, but of course they don't want to do that. They want me to move in their direction, which just couldn't happen.
well, and the system won't allow for that. So by not making it personal and keeping it within the structure of the system for many reasons, I'm sure, that would help to position something to say, well, gee, I understand your motivation. However, there's safety, there's legal, there's all of these things that have already been laid down that make it beyond a personal decision or a personal desire that's within the system itself.
Correct. Yeah, and then you just follow this. You have to follow the system, which then creates an outline for your discussions. I guess that's really
That's
it. It creates the
that's
outline for
it.
your discussion.
That's it. And remember, after you do your pluses, your potentials, your concerns, and you're overcoming the concerns, then that would be the opportunity to say, yeah, so well, I wonder how something like this could be addressed. Well, you'd have to go through the processes of formally to engage how something might be done differently, and I could lend an eye to that, but that's not the task at hand at the moment. And so that brings the conversation to a natural end, and you can hand it back over to them. Pluses, potentials, concerns, overcoming concerns.
Yep, and saving the relationship by overcoming those concerns.
Exactly right.
That
Because
is
by,
the key.
yeah, oh,
Ultimately, with
yeah,
these conversations, it's saving that relationship.
absolutely. Absolutely.